Baby, let me be your loving teddy bear. Put a chain around my neck and lead me anywhere. Let me be, oh, let him be your teddy bear. I don't wanna be a tiger, 'cause tigers play too rough. I don't wanna be.
There has been a lot written about Elvis Presley, so I'm just going to give you the absolute highlights. He was a singer, a guitarist, and a cultural icon. He came from Memphis, Tennessee. He was known for being a key figure in the rock and roll explosion in the 50s, which in retrospect people are tending to call rockabilly these days, which is a term for kind of a cross between the rock and roll um, that was coming through the black music and country music. In the 1950s, he broke through. He had success with his rock and roll records. From 1958 to 1960, he did military service. When he came back from military service, he was mobbed by fans. In the 60s, he mostly did films. His career at that point was being controlled by his manager, who was nicknamed the Colonel, who had a very tight control over what was going on. In 1968, after a long break from playing live, he had a comeback special on the TV and started doing live gigs again. He had a very famous residency in Las Vegas, and then he suddenly died in 1977. He is the best-selling solo music artist of all time worldwide.
Hi, my name's Dan. So obviously this is an album of songs sung by Elvis. It's a soundtrack to the film of the same name. So I didn't realise it was a soundtrack on my first listen. In fact, on my second listen too. So what I normally do as my process is I listen twice. I think that almost every album I listen to twice. Occasionally, I end up listening to more than that. And usually, what I try and do is do a listen and then do a read and then do a listen. And for logistical reasons, on this occasion, I happened to do both listens before I had a chance to read up on this. And so I hadn't clocked that this was a soundtrack either time that I listened through it. And I think that this is so some soundtrack albums, it's really, really obvious that it's a soundtrack album. When it's an album of songs, it can be less obvious, but it can still have that kind of disjointed feel that a soundtrack can have. And on this occasion, it didn't. It doesn't have that at all. It feels like a well put together album. And I think that the reason for this is because actually, in some ways, it's backwards. Is that the films were, I mean, obviously there to make money and to cash in off the name of Elvis, but actually uh, to underpin his musical career. And so the fact that he's primarily a singer and the the stuff around him, the business around him, is so geared towards music. It's no surprise that actually the focus here was on getting an album that was balanced, which it is. It's kind of what you'd expect from an Elvis album, basically. There's no surprises here. There's some songs that I know and some that I don't. There's a good handful of rock and roll, which is kind of the rockabilly end of rock and roll, uh, uh, as Elvis tends to be. Teddy Bear is actually one of my favourite Elvis songs. I'm not a huge Elvis fan, but I do like that song. Actually, I prefer a version by Cliff Richard, but it's not that easy to get hold of. Um, there's some slow romantic stuff, which has got kind of harmony backing, which is strong. Actually, the harmony backing is there quite a lot. That's the Jordanaires, I believe, his backing group. And there's some middle speed songs. And to my mind, the best one of these on the album is Blueberry Hill. And that's probably because I know it. This is one of few tracks on the album that weren't actually in the film, but have been shoehorned into the album to get it up to length. And there is one cowboy song, which is almost obligatory. Uh, for this kind of setting and Elvis, etc., or similar artists. Uh, what can I say about his singing? I mean, everybody knows he's got a distinctive voice. He can sing. He clearly can sing. He does have a tendency to let the kind of stuff overwhelm occasionally, so it's less easy to hear the words. He's a little bit shy about consonants at times, but it's iconic. It's Elvis singing, and if you like Elvis singing, you'll like it, and if you don't like Elvis singing, you might not like it. Um, there's a line in one of the songs. Yeah, it's the song. I've got a lot of living to do. And it just three times in the song he says, "Come on, baby," which is, I mean, first of all, it's so archetypal Elvis, but actually it reminds me of Steve Martin in The Little Shop of Horrors, if you know that film, where he does a kind of Elvis-like dentist. And I'm sure there's kind of the mannerisms of him are very much taken from Elvis on purpose. But it's just kind of, every time it happened, it kind of, oh, Steve Martin kind of popped into my head, which is bizarre. So I would say it's reasonable listening, even for me. I'm not massively against Elvis. I used to be when I was in my teens, but not anymore. But I'm not an Elvis lover. You could peg me as an Elvis skeptic, maybe. It's not deep, but then that's not what you'd expect from an album by Elvis. But it's well done, and there's a good balance of songs, so it's all right. So I reasonably enjoyed this, and I'd love to know what you think, especially if you're an Elvis fan and you want to tell me how it fits within the gamut of other Elvis albums, whether this is considered to be a strong or a weak one or whatever. Anything you want to say about this album, I'd love to hear. So please do so by leaving a comment down there. And that's it from me for now.
I found my thrill on Blueberry Hill, on Blueberry Hill, where I